I remember the mask going over my face, and then the next thing I remember was waking up in a recovery room. I was born a fat baby, grew into a fat kid, grew into a fat teen, grew into a fat adult. I don't think I was even in school yet. They put me in the hospital to see what was wrong. I remember being there, and I remember being really scared, and I remember not being fed, and I remember getting sent home with this little diet. There's a 3-fold diet sheet, and I remember my mom stuck it up on our spice cupboard door so that we always knew what we could eat. It never really limited my life as much as some people might have been affected by it. I did Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Dr. Bernstein, starvation diets, grapefruit diets, soup diets, size program, joined a gym, several times. Oh, acupuncture. All of the things. I tried them all and nothing ever seemed to work. I'd lose weight, gain weight. One family doctor at one point sent me to another endocrinologist, and he just looked at me and he said, "It's not your fault. This is an illness. This is a genetic predisposition. It is not your fault." And unfortunately, for all these years, people have been telling you it's your fault, and that just compounds the issue. He said, "Well, let's look at another alternative." And he said, "Why don't you consider getting your stomach stapled?" And I thought, my God, that's so invasive, and do I really want to have an operation and look at the risks? And he said, "Well, 525 pounds comes with its own risks." So we got an appointment. And one of the most impressive things that you have to do for Dr. Grace is you have to write an essay on why you deserve to have this operation and how it will impact on your life. So I sat down and I wrote my 250 words on basically that I had a pretty decent life so far, and I really didn't have that much to complain about. But you know what? I really wanted to go to the rides on Disneyland, and I wouldn't be able to go on the rides on Disneyland because I didn't fit into them. So that was my essay, and I left it with him. And then at the end of it all, he said, "I want you to go to the rides on Disneyland." So I said, "Okay." So for the next, I guess, 7 or 8 months, we were prepping. I still had to go back and see the dietitian because their hope was that you would lose weight before you went in for the operation. I didn't, quite proudly. I maintained my weight quite nicely. When it was time for me to go into the operating room, they just said, "Well, come on, we're going to the operating room." And I was like, "Yeah, wait a minute, where's my gurney?" So as I was walking along the hall in a very attractive blue gown that was meant for a person who at the maximum would have weighed 200 pounds, so I can only imagine that my butt was hanging out, but I didn't really care because they'd given me some Valium. I'm thinking, why am I walking into this operating room? Is like they don't want to hoist my body from the gurney to the operating table. I was a bit confused. Then the next thing I remember, I woke up in the recovery room. I felt a pain in my right calf, and there was a nurse there, and I said to the nurse, "There's something wrong." She said, "Well, I'll get the doctor." And it wasn't Dr. Grace, believe me, it wasn't Dr. Grace. It was this old fart of a doctor who sort of looked at me like, "What is this beached whale doing here?" And he sort of looked at my leg, and he felt the back of my leg, and "There's nothing wrong with it." And he pulled the sheet down. And anyways, we kept on going, and the nurses were really good, and they kept encouraging me to get up. And I had this one particular nurse who on the day said to me, "Come on, girly goo, you're getting up and you're going for your walk." And I said, "No, I don't feel like it. I don't feel good." She said, "Yep, you're going." And I got up, and I walked from the bed to the door of the room. And I looked at her, and I said, "You know what? I really can't do this." And she said, "That's okay. Come on, we'll go back." And we turned around and we started heading back to the bed, and I got to the edge of the bed. And I was sort of backing up to sit on it, and I just looked at her and I said, "This is the worst I've ever," and I was gone. And the next thing I knew, there was this beautiful, brilliant blue sky and the most lush green trees you've ever seen in your life. And there was, the peace and the tranquility of it all. It was just amazing. I felt no pain, no worries. I had not a care in the world. I have never felt so peaceful and so content and so just right. And all of a sudden I felt this horrible pain in my chest. And I sort of went, "Wow, what was that?" And then I felt it again. And then all of a sudden my eyes opened and I was looking at a room full of people and I went, ow, that hurt. And then I looked at the doctor, what are you doing here? And he said, reviving you. And I said, no. I said, I was sleeping. And he said, no, you need vital signs to sleep. He said, you'd gone. So I spent the next 8 days in intensive care because they had discovered that what had happened was I had had a blood clot in my leg and it broke off and ended up in my lungs, which stopped me from breathing and essentially killed me. While I was lying there, I thought, if I get a second chance at this, things are going to be different when I get out. I don't want to ever be 90 years old or 47 years old or any time near the end and saying, you know what, I should have done that. I want to be able to say, you remember the time I made that movie? Yeah, that was fun. And then from then on, my whole life just started spinning upward. I've done things that I never ever dreamed I would do, and I never say no anymore. That whole mental perception of what your body was and what it is now is completely different. One day I was off to have dinner with some friends and I was trying to hail a cab on the Danforth and I couldn't get one, and this tall, good-looking man in a suit came up to me and said, hello, beautiful. And I looked over my shoulder to see who he was talking to, and he said, yeah, I'm talking to you. And I laughed, and he said, come have dinner with me. And I said, no, I'm going to have dinner with my friends. I couldn't do that. And he said, no, come have dinner with me. And I was like, yeah, what are you doing? This can't be happening to me. And so I just panicked, and a cab came, and I hopped in the cab. And all of a sudden I realized that, wait a minute, there was a guy out there who thought I was cute. All of a sudden I recognized that, oh my God, have I had blinders on all this time? And there are actually lots of people out there who think that I'm worthy of their body and their, accepting of mine. Not long after that, I just started looking at men in a whole different way. So that's my whole life in a nutshell now. Actually, it's not a nutshell, it's more like a bombshell. Just so much bigger than a nutshell.